All right, we are live. It is Parx Sportsbook Presents Stick to Hockey Live with Jason Myrtetus. Gonna have a couple guests today here on this last show before Christmas. It'll be Kevin Kurz from the Athletic, covers the Islanders, covered the San Jose Sharks, worked here in Philadelphia as well. And we got Tone coming on today. Tone's takes and some picks for you. Tone's been shredding this year, so we'll get to that. All the Parx Sportsbook best bets. And Parx Sportsbook obviously presents Stick to Hockey Live. If you missed episode on Monday, you can go back and check that out. We had a good episode on Monday. It was a lot of fun. And any of the past episodes, you can check them out either on the stream on YouTube, or you can go to iTunes, follow and subscribe to Stick to Hockey and Stick to Hockey Live. And it's all presented by Parx Sportsbook. And make sure you download the app, either on Android or iPhone. Easy to use. So simple. You can get your live in-game play-by-play betting. You know, you can bet on player performances, first to score in hockey. Exact score is one that I got to start getting back into when the games start again. I love betting exact score. The only thing with exact score, though, that messes you up sometimes is the empty net goal. And we see teams being more and more aggressive, pulling the goalie. Who was it the other night? Somebody the other night pulled their goalie with 9 minutes to go, 9:30 in the third period, to try and get back into a game down 2 or 3 goals. I forget who it was, but anyway, exact score is another great payout. You put little bets on them, and if you nail it, it's a huge payout. So check those out as well. Plus, you can always bet games straight up, puck line, money line, whatever you want to do. Parlays, props, you name it, it's all there. We're going to get into some futures today as well. No games tonight, obviously. The league is on pause. It will return coming up on Monday. The Flyers will not return until Wednesday when they take on Seattle, out in Seattle for the first time. So we're going to look at some future stuff with Tone today. We got a whole list of stuff here that we're going to check out. I got a whole list of different stuff for the division, who's going to win the Hart, who's going to win the Vezina, what the odds are, who's going to win the West, East, you name it. We've got all kinds of different stuff that we'll go over with Tone. And make sure you follow Parx on Instagram, on Twitter at Parx Sportsbook, Facebook, and YouTube. You'll get daily specials there. You'll get great content. Natalie and Sam and Rich Gann, and there's so much great stuff. Eddie Alvarez, and so much good content that we're putting out here through Parx Sportsbook. So make sure you follow all those different channels. Go back and check out all the different stuff, daily specials as well. So give it a follow on Twitter at Parx Sportsbook, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So we're hitting you on all different platforms here on Stick to Hockey Live, and we're looking forward to the league getting back after the holidays. It's kind of nice to have a couple of days to just sit back and exhale what's been a pretty, maybe the word is for the Flyers first half is traumatic. And when we talk to Kevin Kurz, same thing goes for the Islanders. Now, the Islanders were a team that were picked to win the East, or not to win the East, but they represented the East the last 2 years, but the Metropolitan Division, they went to the conference final in each of the last 2 years, but weird schedule for the Islanders this year. They're actually behind the Flyers and the Devils in the standings. And starting the year off 13 road games while they waited for the new building to open up. Just 22 points on the season, Flyers with 29. And, the interesting thing is, and I think we've talked about that on here. I know I've talked about it on Flyers Daily, is that the Flyers have a 10-game winless skid. They've wins over some really quality opponents like Edmonton, Boston. They've beaten Carolina. They've beaten Washington. They've beaten some really good teams. And right now, when you look at the wild card picture, they're tied in points with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus has played one less game at 28. Flyers have played 29. They're 1 point back of the Boston Bruins, but Boston has 3 games in hand. That's the team that could be the real issue here. But second wild card 2, right now is the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings have 33 points. They've played 31 games, 2 more than the Flyers, 5 more than the Boston Bruins. So they're likely not going to obviously hang on to that spot. But Pittsburgh holds on to wild card number 1. Meanwhile, the Penguins, 39 points in 30 games. So they've played 1 more game than the Flyers. They have 10 more points, but they've won 7 straight. And one of the things we're going to talk about with Kevin, and one of the things I'm really interested in seeing here when the league resumes, is how are teams going to pick up after this pause? Because it was longer than expected. Teams shut down and got postponed, and because of COVID cases and everything, and they just decided, okay, we'll wait till after the break. Facilities will open back up on the 26th, which is Sunday. and we'll go from there. But how these teams respond to this pause, it could cost a team like Pittsburgh momentum. The Flyers were going to go into this week after, when you look from an opponent standpoint with New Jersey, Montreal, and Ottawa, they grabbed 5 of the possible 6 points, but they were going to go into this week and be able to measure themselves a little bit and the progress maybe that they've made in their game against good teams like Washington and a streaking Penguins team. Now, in hindsight, maybe that was a good thing that they didn't get those teams, because maybe their game wasn't back far enough and it would have cost them standings points, and you'll take them later in the season, maybe when you're playing better. They're going to come back. They're going to take on Seattle. Seattle, not very good. You're going to go on the road and do it. But Seattle's a team that they beat earlier in the season, game 2 of the season, as a matter of fact. And they beat them 6-1 at Wells Fargo Center and Dave Hackstall's return. Seattle on the season, they're in the last spot in the Pacific Division, 10-17-3, 23 points, minus 24 in the goal differential. Then you're going to go from Seattle to San Jose. And San Jose was off to a pretty decent start for the year. Now 30 games played, 15-14-1, 31 points. They've lost 2 straight. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Maybe it's a good time to catch San Jose. Then you're going to go to Los Angeles, take on the Kings. And they're a team that's maybe overachieving a little bit, but maybe they're on the rise again. They're in the 5th spot right now in the Pacific Division. And then you'll wrap up the road trip at Anaheim, who's been no pushover. They've been really good this season. They're tied for the top spot with the Vegas Golden Knights with 40 points, but they've played 32 games. But they've been playing well, 6-1-3 in their last 10. So that's the road trip. Then you'll return home to take on the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. So there's a lot to kind of unwrap here, and a lot to kind of, see what, how it's going to play out for the Flyers and how it's going to play out for all of these teams. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting time when the NHL does return. Will we see pauses to the same degree like we saw prior? That remains to be seen. That's the thing. So many players have been infected, and already there's still obviously a lot that haven't. But how is this going to play out over the next couple of weeks, I think, is the really interesting part. So we'll see how that happens and how that takes place and what goes on here for the Flyers and for these teams in the Metropolitan Division and the Eastern Conference. A lot of intrigue. And you look at this other division, you look at the Eastern Conference and the Atlantic Division, Tampa Bay right now. How about this? Tampa Bay, 44 points, tops in the NHL. They won back-to-back cups. They've been without Nikita Kucherov yet again. And and Braden Point for a good amount of time. And they're still getting it done. 26-4, 8-1-1 in their last 10. They've won 3 straight. The Tampa Bay Lightning, could they win 3 straight cups? Oh my goodness. No, let me tell you, Kevin, this is for today, buddy. This is Thursday. Kevin Kurz is texting me right now saying, is this for tomorrow? No, today is Thursday. So Kevin Kurz is supposed to be our guest, but he thought it was for tomorrow. Today's Thursday, right? Yeah, today's Thursday. I'm just making sure I got my days right here. But yeah, today is Thursday, and Kevin's going to join us. And hopefully he's going to join us. I don't know that he is definitely going to join us now, because he said, okay, so he'll join us in just a second. But it all gets confusing. The holiday time is chaos. I hope everybody's gotten their Christmas shopping done and gotten everything straight and in order for the holidays. And I don't know what the hockey gifts are for the holidays this year, but just getting the game back on the ice will be damn fine for us all. And we cannot wait for it to happen, to get the game back. And, it's been like the countdown period repeatedly with hockey. It's okay, we're playing. Now we're counting down to when they return. Okay, we're playing. Now we're counting down to when they return again. But we'll see how it plays out for all of these teams in the next couple of weeks and leading into the playoffs. And it looks like with no Olympic participation, that's been announced, obviously, that the makeup games, I think there's roughly 50 plus that they will be making them up in that period of time that was supposed to be the Olympics. I think the Flyers, only 4 games scheduled in the month of February. They play the 1st, and then they don't play scheduled-wise till the 23rd. So you could see that Pittsburgh and Washington game fall in there. I imagine we're still going to see some sort of extended break for teams. And this is really come at a weird time for fantasy hockey players, because I'm in a fantasy league, and last week They just decided to make it a bye week with so many postponements. And it's almost unfair, but we'll see how they figure out this schedule situation with February, how many more games they may need to add to that period of time when, they're trying to make up all this and still end the season on April 29th to begin the playoffs right in the beginning of May, which is not the normal time of year, because usually we wrap up the NHL schedule anywhere between the 5th and maybe the 9th of April. But this year it's going to go a little bit later as they try to do everything they can to get closer and closer to a normal schedule. And joining us right now on Parx Sportsbook Presents Stick to Hockey Live from the Athletic, covered the Sharks for a decade out in the Bay Area, and he's back east now. It's Kevin Kurz who joins us right now. Kevin, how we doing?
Good, Jason. How are you? Sorry, it's just getting settled here in New York. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind. So
it's dizzying, like around the holiday time too, isn't it?
Okay.
Well, you only came from the West Coast to the East Coast, so it's not that far.
Yeah. It's only 2,500 miles.
What's it been like coming back east after all those years out on the West Coast? Because lifestyle on the West Coast is different. 7:00 East Coast games start at 4:00 out there.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss that. They've always made it easier, I thought, to follow the league living on the West Coast because I could watch the first two periods of an East Coast game at home before going back to when the Sharks would usually play at 7:30. So we'll see how that changes the way I'm gonna try and pay attention to the league. But I do think it was a little bit easier just for that reason, because there were those early starts.
See, you have an advantage though. You're a hockey writer. Like normal people that get off work at 5, is that an issue for them?
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, working a game day, as there's a lot of downtime between 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. before I would go back for a 7:30 game. So, yeah, that's probably true. But just the only perspective I'm worried about is mine. So
you're living your life. Nobody else is. How did you like the Bay Area, and what was hockey like out there from a fan standpoint?
Well, I always wanted to get back east just because I feel like hockey just feels a little bit more important out this way. But not that there aren't there was obviously a very passionate, hardcore fan base in San Jose and in many of those other markets as well. Obviously, LA would typically sell at the Staples Center. Vegas has built what they've built. But back east and being here, I think it's a little bit more. It's more just of a sports town feel. Hockey's more ingrained in the sports culture here than it is probably in obviously in California. So I'm and obviously that's what I grew up around. Growing up a Flyers fan and then working for the team for about 10 years. I just miss that excitement a little bit, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it again.
Yeah, there's a vibe around on the East Coast. And the weather changes more here than it does in Southern California or in the Bay Area even as well. Covering the Sharks, you got to cover some pretty legendary players: Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau. We know about the amount of games that he's played. What were those guys like to cover for you?
Yeah, Jumbo Joe Thornton was great. It took me probably years. Let's see, I guess we were there for 8 years. I covered him for 8 years. The first few, when he's one of those guys that once he gets to know you, he'll open up a little bit, and even then, not a whole lot. But also, as too, as guys get older in age, they tend to be a little bit more forthcoming, maybe a little bit more open with their media availabilities. And I thought Joe was like that as the years went by. Great, just a great guy to cover because he did, he was still so effective for so late in his career. And, I know everyone's making a big deal, and rightfully so, of Alex Ovechkin leading the league and scoring at 36 years old. Joe did that when he was 36 in 2015, 2016. He didn't lead the league in scoring, but he finished fourth. I think it was 82 points in 82 games, 3 points behind Sidney Crosby. So that was a pretty extraordinary achievement. I think he got some Hart Trophy votes that year, and I think people forget that just how effective he was. But and Patrick Marleau was a little bit different. He was obviously a little bit less of a character than Joe or guys like Brent Burns, who I covered his whole Sharks career up to this point. Um, but always a professional, and everyone talked about how professional he was, how much he kept himself in shape. And it was a shame last year with the pandemic, you know, not really getting to the full experience of him breaking that game's played record.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been a much more, obviously it was a momentous occasion, but had that been in full arenas and in front of a full home crowd, which he never, the home crowd never got to recognize him for that because, he's not playing right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
Mhm.
Brent Burns, another one of those characters too that I imagine was a good guy to cover as well as Pavelski. And
Yeah.
you covered a cup final with that team. When you look at that team, and Kev, you've been around the game a long time. In your experience, kind of covering teams and watching this league as a journalist, as a fan, to growing up and everything, what's the consistent thing that it takes to get to a cup final? There's a little bit of luck involved, isn't it?
Yeah, it's matchups in the playoffs.
Yep.
For that, I guess I've been in two of them, right? 2010 was that Flyers team. I was doing handling all the web content then that year, and for them it was, um, they had a good matchup in the first round against New Jersey. I remember.
Yeah.
And then
Caps
obviously the
got knocked
shootout
out.
to get in the playoffs, they were riding that momentum. And I remember they blew through the Devils, I think, in 5 games. And then you get to the Bruin series, and it was just a historical 0-3 comeback, right? The reverse sweep there. Um, and then it was another good matchup for them in the conference finals against Montreal. And for the Sharks in 2016, it was a little bit different. I think going back to that Flyers run, well, Boston got swept they got reverse swept, and then they won the Stanley Cup. Was it the
The next
next
year.
season, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2011.
So they had something to prove. And um, I thought the 2016 Sharks were a little bit like that because they got reverse swept by the Kings in
Yep.
2014. And although it was 2 years later, they missed the playoffs in 2015. They had a little bit of a stealthy, I think they were basically trying to tank for McDavid that year, quite frankly. But then they come back the next season with most of the core guys that had been part of that reverse sweep in 2014 to the Kings. And they play the Kings again in the first round, and they got by the Kings. And I think that was a big sigh of relief for that group. And then, they went on to win the next couple rounds. So, they didn't win the final. They were Pittsburgh was just too fast for them that year in 2016. They had trouble with their speed, but that run meant a lot to that community just because they had gotten so close so many times and it always crapped out in the playoffs.
How much does the Stanley Cup, the run to the final that year, didn't win it, but got to a final? How much did that grow the hockey fan market out there? I imagine a pretty good amount because everybody jumps on board.
Surprisingly, it did not. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
the next season, I'm pretty sure that attendance and the TV ratings were actually down
Phew.
from the season before, and that was because of the Warriors. And
Oh, yeah.
I got to the Bay Area right when the Warriors were becoming this generational team, and that hurt the Sharks, no doubt, and still hurting them to this day. I think just how overshadowed they became, even in San Jose, by the Warriors. And the Warriors, even when they were bad, I know when I first got there, they were still a popular team, but you had the Giants winning 3 World Series in 10 years, 2 Super Bowls for the 49ers. Um, even the A's were pretty good. I know the Sharks are San Jose's only team, but it's still, people consider themselves Bay Area residents, whether they live in San Francisco, whether they live in San Jose, um, East, West, all over there. So it didn't really help. And now that the team is struggling, there's not fans in the building right now. There were the smallest crowds in the time that I had been there. And I think a lot of that is people are a little bit different about COVID there. I think they're more hesitant to jump back into normal life
Yeah.
than in other areas. But as a franchise, they've got some work to do to reestablish the I don't want to say their relationship with the community, but just they have a little bit of work to do if they're going to um, become that stable franchise again. Because right now, I think it's a little unstable.
Yeah, a little in flux.
Right.
Let's talk about your new team because you're covering the New York Islanders, and boy, Kev, you jump over to a team that's gone to 2 conference finals. They've arguably, and I don't know a lot of people that would argue against it, maybe the best coach in the game in Barry Trotz. What
Hmm.
he did from, the Doug Waite Islanders to the first year of Trotz was only shaved 102 goals allowed year to year. They
Yeah.
went from the giving up the most goals in the NHL to the least, pretty much with the same goaltenders, right?
Hmm.
But they get off to the start this year. Obviously, the 13-game road trip to begin the season while the arena's getting finished is a big part of this story. But how much of the story is that 13-game road trip?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't covering the team day to day when they were on that road trip, but people that I've talked to seem to think it was massive, and it was the 13-game road trip coming after the delayed playoffs last year, right? Where they lost in the conference final, but that still went until the end of June.
Yeah.
They were in the bubble in the conference final the year before. This team's played a lot of hockey. It's an older roster. So I think that's had a lot to do with it. They did have a significant COVID outbreak. They were one of the Sharks and the Islanders were pretty much the first two teams that had significant COVID outbreaks. I think that maybe played a role. And that was the last piece I wrote is, they lost a lot of defensemen, and that's this team is built around its defense core and its defensive structure, and they lost. Adam Pelech was out for a bit. Ryan Pulak's still out. Andy Green was sidelined. I mean, those are three veteran guys. And, they bring in Zdeno Chara, who doesn't move like he did 10 years ago. He's struggling a little bit. Other players like a Noah Dobson, maybe not quite ready for the minutes he's getting. He's still young, 21 years old, I believe. Still a little bit mistake prone. So, the 13-game road trip didn't help, but there were other factors too, which I think um, have contributed to the slow start, and it's also the roster construction. I think they're too slow on the back end. They're missing Barzell right now. They don't have enough finishers up front. So the one consistent part of their game, from what I've been able to glean, is the goaltending with Ilya Sorokin's been outstanding and been
Yeah.
the best player. So they're fortunate they're getting some saves, but we'll see how when the blue line gets healthy again and they get everyone back. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully the league as a whole doesn't have to endure too many more COVID outbreaks. We'll see. I tend to think they're too far gone to make the playoffs at this point. You just
Mhm.
just do the math, and you see teams like Pittsburgh pulling away and winning games. I don't really see a path for them to make the playoffs, but there is a lot of hockey left.
There is. And, Sorokin, has he grabbed that mantle from Varlamov?
It
Is it
seems
his
like it,
crease?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Varlamov, he missed training camp, and then he finally got his first win the other day. So we'll see if he can rebound a little bit and they become more of a 1A or 1B. But right now, at least the impression I'm under is that Sorokin is the number one right now, and 26 years old, just his second year in the league. But I think he's gonna be the guy here for a long time.
Eye-popping numbers in the KHL too before he came
Mhm.
over. I mean, eye-popping, like
Yeah.
960 save percentages, insignificant
Well,
amount of just I mean, these goalies in this division going forward, Kev, are like, I mean, you look at Shesterkin, he could be the guy to
yeah.
win the Vezina this year. You look at Sorokin, you look at Samsonov, you look at Carter Hart,
Yep.
Mackenzie Blackwood. I mean, this is the goaltending in this division's outrageous.
Yeah. And Martin Jones.
And Martin Jones, that's right. Well, they haven't two teams 30 games into a season in the Metro. It looks like they say that that's the best division in hockey, yet two teams in the division went winless in 10 or 10 plus games. Flyers did it in 10.
Mhm.
The Islanders went 11. Could you see the Islanders ready to break out of it? Because their last three games, they pushed it beyond regulation.
Yes and no. I think they've been better. I think had they hung on in Sunday's game against the Golden Knights and won that game, they're up 3-2. It was an impressive game up until the last minute because it was a 2-2 game. They had a goal disallowed from being offsides. They came right back and scored another goal, took the lead again. and then they're a minute away from closing out Vegas, and Shea Theodore's slap shot ties it up, and they lose in a shootout. So, you got to take baby steps, right, to come out of the kind of a slump that they've been in here for a month and a half. So that might have been one positive step forward. They beat Boston, then they lose in Detroit, beat the Devils. So we'll see. I mean, I think I certainly think they're better than their record. I will say that when everyone's healthy, and this is still a team that's got some very, very good players. And as you said, a very good coach.
He in trouble at all? Trotz?
I don't think so. I've tried to talk to as many people as possible just to get a grip on this team as I'm jumping into a new beat midseason, which is not so simple. And I don't talk to no one I've talked to thinks he should be in trouble or thinks he is in trouble. So
yeah,
I
if he
can't
were to hit the market, geez, I mean, teams would be lining up.
Yeah, and this is a team too. The way I look at it, they made some errors in the way they trading Devon Taves, Nick Leddy leaving, Jordan Eberle going to Seattle. They didn't have a good offseason.
Yeah.
But I do still think they have a pretty good core and some young players that could potentially take the next step. So if this is a year, maybe you just write off this year. They don't have much to call at the deadline, but maybe you see what you can get for a couple guys, just explore the market, keep the core intact, maybe get lucky in the lottery and draft a prospect that could contribute because their prospect pool is a little thin. And maybe you just come back and try to retool in the offseason with that same core, put some different guys in place, upgrade the blue line a little bit, and make another run at it. I think that might be the most logical or the most likely course of action with this team.
They have one of the great hockey minds, and tough for a guy to cover the team when Lou's in charge, because Lou controls everything right down to the amount of ice you put in the cups at the vending station. He is got his fingers in everything. Did you get a welcome meeting with Lou Lamoriello?
I had a 20-minute chat with him, just just a meet and greet, just kind of an off the record sort of chat. What I did? I told him in 1995. You remember the Claude Lemieux goal against Ron Hextall and the old Spectrum from the top of the circles?
Yeah.
I told him how much those Devils teams in the 90s drove me crazy as a kid.
Sure, he appreciated that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I worked for him. God, it might have been the late 80s when he was running the Providence College Hockey School, and he was as controlling then as he is now. But I found him to be kind of an endearing guy in a way. I know he's very stern, and Lou gets what Lou wants. Whatever Lou wants, he gets, and he's savvy, but he's a good general manager. The only problem for you is there's not a lot of leaks in that organization.
No, there's not. All my work cut out. It'll be a challenge. But I do hear, I just like you, I've talked to multiple people that have worked for Lou in the past from the hockey side, and I covered Pete DeBoer for, I guess, 4.5 seasons, and Pete loved him, and he fired Pete on Christmas. So, and I saw Pete the other day because I went to the Golden Knights locker room after Sunday's game, and just because I wanted to say hi to Pete, and we did joke about that a little bit. I said, I haven't talked to Lou yet, but I know you loved him, even though he fired you on Christmas. And Pete got a laugh out of that because it is true.
Wow. How's things at the Athletic? I talk about it all the time. I'm an Athletic subscriber because I think that they provide some of the greatest hockey coverage out there right now, in depth. So good. How's it been at the Athletic for you?
Great. Yeah, it's been. It came along right when I was about to get laid off at NBC, so I'm
perfect.
I'm the luckiest sports writer alive because I went from one job. I got laid off at one job and started a new one right when the Athletic was starting up in 2017-18. So this is my 5th season with them. It's been great. I'm the same way. I there's so much good content on our site, and we have a good group of writers. Lots of friends of mine. So, yeah, it's certainly no complaints from my end.
Yeah, and I encourage people, if you're not a subscriber to The Athletic, absolutely pick it up. It's great for hockey fans, whether it's your local team, like you're covering the Islanders now, and you'll provide great coverage there, like you did with the Sharks, or the national stuff. Pierre LeBrun writes great stuff. There's
Mm.
so much good stuff on there. Charlie O'Connor, of course, covers the Flyers as well. Kev, I appreciate your time today, man. I know it's close to the holidays, and everybody's kind of jamming, and you're trying to move in and get some stuff hung on those walls. You got some white walls there, man.
Yeah, they're all bare right now for sure. Yeah. Fortunately, because I live in New York, the walls aren't too big, so they don't take a lot to fill
You in
up.
the city?
I'm in Queens.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but I'm close to Manhattan in Astoria, so yeah, looking forward to getting all settled up here.
Well, it's great to have you back on the East Coast. Thanks for doing this, man. We'll talk again soon,
Thanks,
and
Jason. Yeah,
we
I'll see you
appreciate it.
soon.
All
Take
right,
care.
there's Kevin Kurz joining us on the Stick to Hockey Live podcast, now covering the Islanders. We'll check back with him when the season gets going again. He can get kind of settled and everything, but he provides great coverage. And again, the Athletic does a great job of covering the game. So everybody's got to check that out. Let me tell you that Parx Sportsbook Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Make sure you download the app on iPhone or Android. It's real easy to do. You get a $500 risk-free bet just for signing up. Check it out. Easy to use, easy functionality. You don't need to be a wizard on your phone or anything like that. Even those of average intelligence on a smartphone can get it done with the Parx Sportsbook app. And make sure you follow them on the social channels as well, at Parx Sportsbook on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. It's all there. You'll get daily specials and great content as well. But it is time now for a little new segment we have here on Stick to Hockey Live, and we have a little intro as well. Would you look at that? That's some wizard editing. We bring him in now. Tone's takes. What's going on, Tone?
What's up, Jason? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you been?
Thanks for having good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're having a good season, brother.
Yeah, it's been a good run so far. Hopefully we can pick it back up when the break is over, which is hopefully Monday. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know you see the pause and you see so many teams getting paused. And for the handicapper and the people who like to get action on the NHL, it's been a little different because sometimes a team's been on a bit of a longer break than was planned. And how are teams going to respond with so many players out? How have you found that affect you, kind of your ability to pick winners here?
Yeah, especially lately with the COVID protocols happening so late in the day. Guys, you kind of have to wait a little bit into the afternoon to see what's what, and maybe later for the for the West Coast games, especially with the props too. If you know a guy is out maybe on the top line, you have someone on the second line bumping up, moving up in that position, you can maybe look at their shot on goal prop or points prop or assist prop. So definitely an adjustment. You definitely don't want to put stuff in a little too early now with these protocols. So it's got to roll with the punches, right?
Yeah, once the season settles a little bit and we see less of this, it'll become, kind of back to the old way. Let me tell people about you real quick. You're born and raised in South Philly. You've been a Flyers fan your whole life, and you got into the handicapping and especially hockey. And your Twitter is at Tones Takes, and you're providing great stuff. How about this? Your props record on the season, 92-75, plus 26.83 units, and your overall NHL season record, 160, 153, and 7, plus 22 units. Plus $22 and 16 units. So, I mean, pretty damn good numbers, man.
Yeah,
all things considered, especially.
Yeah, definitely. I started dipping in the props a little bit last season. I only did like smaller bets on them, kind of feel them out. And then this year I just started making every play 1 unit, and you can find a lot of plus money shot on goal props out there that are definitely worth it. You look at home road splits, the team's tendencies, especially shots against and things like that. There's a lot of information out there. So yeah, it's been doing pretty well with them. So hopefully we can keep it up.
Yeah, I love first to score and guys to score goals. I love that prop, and I like exact score, but the empty net goal thing always gets me on exact score.
Yep. Sometimes you get the empty net, or sometimes you don't. It seems like this year teams aren't shooting for that empty net.
Yeah,
as they recently have. I've been burned a couple times on not getting a 5.5 because of a 3-2 final. But
yeah,
that's part of it.
Yeah, and teams pull their goalie so early, and you go, "Oh my god, if they score this, I'm going to nail the exact bet at 4-2." and then the team just kind of doesn't go for it. I'm like, what? Come on, you got to send it to 200 feet. I don't care if you get an icing.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about some of the futures plays, because obviously the league's dark right now until coming up on the 27th. But let's start with some of the award winners and some of the odds there. Let's look at the Vezina, because this is an interesting one. Just talking to Kevin Kurz, we're talking about guys that could win the Vezina this year, and who's that going to be? Vasilevsky's a guy on a really good Tampa team. You look around the league at some of the top goaltenders. But right now, one that maybe you like is Jack Campbell in Toronto. He was a guy that I really didn't believe in. Maybe it's just stylistically the way he plays. I don't love his game, but that team's a lot better defensively than a lot of people are giving it credit for this year. So you like Jack Campbell a little bit back there.
I do. He's been a stonewall for that team. He's 15-5-2 this year, 937 save percentage, 194 goals against. He's got 3 shutouts. He's had 17.4 goals saved above expected, which kind of shows that, he kind of tidies up a little bit of the defensive lapses that Toronto still can have. I think if he keeps it up, I think he's going to be the difference with the Leafs this year, as opposed to Freddie Anderson, who just couldn't really embrace playing in Toronto for maybe it's the pressure or what, but you would have him give up the soft goal every once in a while. But Campbell has been an absolute stud so far for this year for them. I've cashed a couple save props on him this year. He's been very profitable.
Yeah, and on Parx Sportsbook, he's plus 650 to win the Vezina. It's nice. It's a nice number. It's a nice return. I guess the guy that kind of stands in his way is probably Shesterkin.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully he can get healthy here. The Rangers, they're going to be on his shoulders. So between those two, I think those are definitely 2 good bets for the Vezina.
Yeah, and I'm always like tracking the Vezina because I love goaltending. Shesterkin right now plus 500, Campbell against 650, Vasilevsky actually behind him at 700, and Markstrom out in Calgary is having a great year at plus 800, but 650 on Campbell, certainly some good value there. Let's talk about the Hart Trophy, because this is the one that is a big one. It's the biggest trophy in the game, in my opinion. And McDavid and Draisaitl are just shredding right now, but maybe they fracture the vote a little bit again out in Edmonton. But there's a guy, 36 years old, who is just unbelievable, and he's not just scoring on the power play. He's chasing down a huge record in Wayne Gretzky's goal record. Alex Ovechkin at plus 400. To me, right now, he is the favorite. He's tied in odds with Draisaitl, but the odds favorite right now, plus 125, is McDavid. But I love this play that you have on Ovechkin.
Yeah, he's been their horse this year with all the injuries. Backstrom's only played 1 game. Oshie's only played 14. Ovi's got 22 goals, and he has 25 assists. Usually he has more goals than assists. He's a plus 18. He's put the Capitals on his back this year. A lot of people didn't think the Caps, thought the Caps were going to fall off a little bit this year, but which they could have. But Ovechkin has just been a monster this year.
Let's look at you look at the standings right now. We're not quite halfway through the season. For the most part, on average, 30 games in, so still 52 games to be played for most teams. And when you look out in the West and you look at that Central, some good teams there. Minnesota Wild have been a good team to start the year. Nashville surprised somebody with that goaltending of UC Saros. They've won 7 straight. Colorado's been kind of scuffling a little bit with they can score with McKinnon and McCarr, and McKinnon was hurt for a period of time, and obviously Landeskog, and we'll see what they do at the deadline. But a team possibly to win the West is a team that won the Cup a couple of years ago in dramatic fashion in St. Louis, and right now they're getting plus 1,000 to win the West.
Yeah, this is a team that really not a lot of people are talking about. They've had some injury problems this year. Haven't really had their full lineup. But they have a guy like Jordan Kyrou, who's like a young spark plug for them. If Binnington can get back to his 2019 form, I think when this team, they get Perron back, Schenchers came back a few weeks ago, they're fully healthy. I think they're a team who can make some noise in the West for sure. And at plus 1,000, they're definitely worth the flyer because they've done it before. They did it and started out in January when they won the Cup in 19. They got on that streak and then beat Boston in Game 7. So
yeah, Gloria. at the
Yep.
South Philly bar.
Go Philadelphia bar. Yep.
Yeah, that was
Our
when
contribution to the cup, I guess, right?
Yeah, Bennington just came in and that game against the Flyers shut them out.
Shut them out. Yep.
And then they would just went on that crazy run. And
Yep.
I just saw a report today that Tarasenko still wants to be traded, but and he's having a great year. I mean, he's one of the players of the week.
Yep.
Let's look at another team in the West because, I was on TSN 1290 in Edmonton a couple of weeks ago when after the Flyers fired Alain Vigneault, and the host of the show asked me why the Flyers always fire coaches, and I took it a step further, Tone, and I said, why do NHL teams fire coaches? And I said, because it works. And you look at what's going on in Vancouver right now. How about the Canucks winning 6 straight after being a dumpster fire to start the year? They fire Travis Green. They bring in Bruce, who's done this before. Did it with Washington back in the mid-2000s to take them, turn their season around. And looks like he's turning around right now. And I imagine this is kind of a soft play for you, but with a huge return, plus 5,000 for the Canucks to win the West with Thatcher Demko and Bruce Boudreau behind the bench.
Yeah, if they can get in, this team's going to make some noise. I like their makeup. I like their guys up front. They need to get Pedersen going. I like the Ekman Larson and Garland additions. Bruce has them playing very good hockey. 6-0, 3.5 goals per game, 1.7 goals against since he's been there. And Demko, he got on that run in the bubble in that Vegas series. He was I think there was a couple games he had maybe 50 saves. So I'm high on him. He's one of the best young goalies in the league, I think. And if this team gets in, I think they can make some noise. So definitely a good, good long shot bet. But I mean, how often do we see teams who change coaches during the middle of the year make a cup run? So this is one team that I think can do it. Maybe the Jets too, but I think the Canucks are a decent bet if they get in.
Yeah, I would agree. And their team that, when Bruce gets there, his teams are going to score. And so much is predicated on Pedersen and Hughes and all those guys. And he will get a lot out of them. Bruce does a real good job with that. He's gone to a conference final in Anaheim. So we'll see if they can, get in and really, they're not going to be a team that anybody wants to play. Let's look at the East because, one of the teams that's in the Metro wasn't in the same division with the Flyers and the Caps and the Pens last year in the Mass Mutual East, but it's Carolina. They're back. Brindamore's obviously back. They're off to a great start. I think structurally, Tone, they're one of the best teams in the league. They are what they are. They bring in Freddie Anderson to solidify that goaltending position, and he's done really well. They're sitting in the top spot right now in the Metro, tied with the Caps in points, but 2 games in hand. I'm surprised the Canes are only plus 700. That the odds aren't, the return would be lessened for them to win the East, but they look like a team not only that can do it, but is built to do it.
Yeah, I love their style of play. They're a very tough team to play against. Like if I'm looking at like a player prop for like a shot on goal or something like that, I will not bet that player if they're playing the Hurricanes. It's just their puck possession style. Recently, the weakness has been their goaltending with Mrazek and Nedeljkovic. Freddie Anderson's off to a great start. Hopefully he can sustain it. If he can, I think this team is a good bet to win the East. You look at they've lost to Boston and Tampa the past 3 years in the playoffs. Those teams aren't as deep this year anymore. So I think if they come across Tampa Bay in a playoff series, I think the Canes are going to be able to handle them this year. And a lot of times when you expect a team to get to the finals like Carolina the past few years, it gets to a point where when people don't expect them to win, that's when they do it, So yeah. I like the Canes so far in the East, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, what do you look at with a team like Toronto, because they have the best odds or the worst odds in a way, plus 350 to win the East. But we know Toronto has not won a playoff series in a long time. And every year you look at it and you go, how this team looks different this year. They look better. They are better defensively. We talked about Jack Campbell. When you look at Toronto, I mean, it's going to be just tough to come out because you're going to have to deal with Tampa in there as well. And they look poised, Tampa, to be the representative of the Eastern Conference again and try and win a 3rd straight cup. Those two teams
crazy. Yeah.
could be just an absolute war if they were to meet up.
Yeah, it would definitely be an entertaining series for sure. It's wide open, both sides, East and West. The league is wide open this year. The Leafs, I mean, yeah, they've had their playoff problems coming up, but I'm high on Campbell. I think he can be the difference for them. And then who knows, maybe they'll make some additions at the deadline. So we'll see what happens.
What do you think of the Flyers odds in the division to make the playoffs? Let me look at it right now. I'm looking on the Parx Sportsbook app. When you look at the Metro, they're not going to win the Metro, but I mean, their math is not that difficult. Kevin Kurz just said that when we had him on who covers the Islanders, that the math is really difficult for the Islanders to make the playoffs, and it probably is because they're so far back and they had that 11-game winless skid. But the Flyers only 4 points back, but Boston's in between with some games in hand. Is the math too difficult for the Flyers to make the postseason, in your opinion?
I mean, I still think they can get on a run. I thought they were going to have a good year coming in. I mean, Hart has looked great this year. They still have to shore up their defense, but hopefully they get Ellis back, and he does that. I love the Atkinson acquisition. It's kind of giving them a little bit of a spunk up front. So I mean they've been playing well under Yo. They've been scoring goals. So they're definitely still in the mix. I think.
Yeah,
definitely still in the mix. So
yeah, that month of January is going to really tell the tale, and they don't have the brutal schedule that they had. I mean, that schedule they had was just during the 10-game winless skid. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, they just got to beat the teams that they should beat, and then go from there. I mean, they do match up pretty well with some of the teams in their division. They always play Washington well. They usually hang in with Pittsburgh. The Islanders give them fits, but Carolina, they've hung with Carolina. They beat them already in Carolina. So, if they can get going, I still think I don't think they're going to win a division, like you said, but they can still get into that last playoff spot. Because Detroit, I think, has that last playoff spot right now, which I think they're going to fall off. So
yeah, I can't. That doesn't look sustainable in Detroit to me in any way, shape, or form. I mean, 5 games in hand. I think Boston's only 2 points back and 5 games in hand on Detroit. So they're not going to hang there. I don't think Columbus is going to hang around in the picture that much longer either. You're starting to see that separation.
They can't keep the puck out of their own net. They're scoring goals, but they can't keep the puck out of their own net. So
yeah, Tone, this was awesome, man. Tones Takes. Follow him on Twitter at Tones Takes, TONES Takes on Twitter, and we'll be looking for your picks there. And we're going to talk again soon, Tone. Best luck cashing them. And once the game gets going again, get back on the ice. We'll look at individual games and some props in game and stuff like that. We appreciate the time. Have a great holiday, man.
Thanks, man. You too. Appreciate it, Jason. Take care.
There he is. Tones Takes on Stick to Hockey Live. Great insight there. He's got Jack Campbell at plus 650 on the Vezina on the Parx Sportsbook lines. Alex Ovechkin plus 400 for the Hart. The Blues at plus $1,000 to win the West. And a little flyer. How about on the Canucks at plus 5,000 to win the West? If they get in, they could be an interesting team. And then the Hurricanes at plus 700 to win the East. So there's Tones Takes for you on this episode of Stick to Hockey Live. Let me tell you about Parx and the Sportsbook app. Make sure you download the app, use it on your phone, or just head to parxcasino.com/PA. All the info is there. Real easy to sign up. You get a $500 risk-free bet just for signing up. Again, it's simple. No promo required. Just deposit. And if you lose, that first bet is risk-free up to $500. And you can put it on all kinds of different stuff. You put it on futures. You can put it on individual player performances, on games, puck line, you name it, all there for you. And make sure you follow Parx Sportsbook on all the different social channels on Twitter at Parx Sportsbook, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Get the great content there, get daily specials, insight. It's all there for you on all the different social channels as well. Everybody, I want everybody to have a really, really great Christmas, a good holiday weekend. We'll be back Monday with another brand new episode of Stick to Hockey Live, Monday and Thursday next week at 1 p.m. And the game will get back underway coming up on Monday as well, which is the 27th. Flyers will be back in action coming up on the 29th in Seattle. A little late night hockey to start the new year for the Flyers. 29th against Seattle at 10 o'clock. Then San Jose on the 30th at 10:30. Give me some late nights for me, man. And then January 1st in LA at 10:30. And then they'll wrap up that road trip against the Anaheim Ducks, 10 o'clock, coming up on January 4th before returning home to take on the Penguins on January 6th. So that's going to do it for this episode of Stick to Hockey Live. Everybody have a great Christmas. We'll talk to you on a brand new episode coming up on Monday. Enjoy the holiday, and we'll talk next on the next episode of Stick to Hockey Live, presented by Parx Sportsbook.